Hey guys, and welcome back to the Science of Exercise podcast. In this episode, we're going to be covering this hypothesis known as the hormone hypothesis. And basically, it states that you can pack on muscle by just simply elevating your hormone production post-workout. Before we make any definite conclusions on this hypothesis, we need to review the evidence and see if there's any out there that supports this hypothesis. The first study I want to look at, which was really interesting, by Wilkinson and colleagues in 2006. Now, their goal was to increase hormone levels post-exercise, but they only trained one leg while the other leg did not train at all. Now, I thought this was a really interesting concept, and basically, what they saw when they increased hormone production, the trained leg saw an increase in muscle mass. Now, the untrained leg didn't see any growth. Now, this already pokes a hole in the hormone hypothesis, meaning the one leg that did not train still saw an increase in hormone production, but it didn't increase in size. So the leg that got a training stimulus did. This is just an important thing to take away from that first study from Wilkinson and colleagues. The next study by West and colleagues in 2011 did a bicep or arm training study. And basically they let one group do a high hormone response. So they did some legs after they did their arms. And the outcome showed no difference between just the arm group and the arm and leg group. Again, high hormone response in one group, low hormone response in the other group, and there was no difference in muscle growth. And the next study by Ronstedt and colleagues in 2011, they also did an arm study, very similar to the West and colleagues group. Now, what they did was they let the legs train before the arms in the high hormone group. In the low hormone group, again, they just did arms. Now, this study did show significant differences in muscle growth between the groups, meaning the high hormone, legs, and arm group saw bigger increases in arm growth versus just the arm group. So now we have two studies refuting the hypothesis, and we have one study supporting the hypothesis. We've got kind of some wishy-washy responses here, and we need to take a further look. We need to look at one more study. And the next study that I want to look at is by Correia and colleagues. They did something a little bit different in their study to look at the hormone hypothesis. They actually gave one group a testosterone inhibitor. And what this inhibitor did was it decreased their testosterone levels. The other group, they got what we call a placebo. And a placebo basically just means there should not be any changes in their testosterone levels in this case. Now, the surprise finding for me was the group that had almost no testosterone, I mean, they had a 11-fold decrease in testosterone levels, still saw an increase in muscle mass from their original starting point, meaning they showed muscle growth with almost no testosterone. At this point now, we have a study that decreased testosterone levels almost to zero and still showed that you could actually have muscle growth. And then there was another study that we already covered that showed in the legs, if you train one leg and not the other, still spike hormone production, that only the trained leg is going to see muscle growth, not the untrained leg. These studies show that hormone production post-exercise is not a significant factor in improving muscle mass. Rather, you need a training stimulus to promote muscle growth. So my practical recommendations is not to chase a hormone response after exercise, rather to progressively overload your lifts and take optimal rest breaks between sets so you can train at a high effort level. You also need to train close to failure with a sufficient training load. This is probably around 30 to 90% of your 1RM. Now, you should be completing anywhere from 9 to 15 sets of resistance training per muscle group each week to maximize muscle growth. And you may even need to do a little bit more if you're an advanced lifter. And lastly, consume at least 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight per day in high-quality protein sources. And try to make sure you're in a caloric surplus to maximize muscle growth.